ever worried that you might be the cool kid? You wear the latest fashions on top of all the trends. Or have you ever worried you were too much in the mainstream? Always so generic, more normal than your friends. Well, we've devised a test to put to rest your fears. There's no need to panic if you lend us your ears. Tonight you can't sleep easy after all that you've heard. Cause if you like the show, then you're probably a nerd. Oh, Canon, it's Canon, it's all. With Tyler, Phil, and Boris. Oh, Canon, it's Canon, it's all in Canon.
It's Wednesday. You know what that means. It's time for a new episode of the It's Canon podcast, the podcast where I talk about all things geek, the podcast where I talk about all things pop culture. We're your hosts. I'm Boris, and as always, I'm joined by Phil.
Hello. How are you doing, Mr. Boris?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing fantastic, actually.
That is excellent to hear on this nice, lovely Wednesday.
Yep, on this beautiful, exciting Wednesday.
You know what? I'm sad, though, man. I'm sad. Because Friday, there's not a new episode of Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Yeah, that kind of sucks. But next week, we will have a new Disney show to watch because it's May the 4th. So we have stuff to do, stuff to talk about.
Yeah, it's a topic I like.
Yeah.
I'm sure it'll be interesting.
Yep. So today, it being our midweek episode, it's usually our TV and other stuff reviews. So today we're going to be talking about all things Falcon and the Winter Soldier, episode number 6, the season finale.
Yeah, well, like, talk about our concern about tying up loose ends.
Mm-hmm.
They, in my opinion, they did pretty darn good job of collecting them all and bringing them to a good spot. Like,
yep. In the grand scheme of things, yes. I think maybe they tried to tackle a little too much. Especially I find in that, like, the last quarter of the episode, it was just like scene, reveal, big drop, reveal.
Yeah, it's true. It got a little bit, I don't know, like you were saying. On the prep for this one and whatnot, or on our weekly news roundup, we kind of nailed a lot of the stuff in this episode about those reveals and whatnot.
We basically,
I don't know if we're getting that good or if it was just that predictable.
I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's something that we talked about last week with this show, and I think, it's what I'm a little nervous of, and that's the formulaic nature of these Disney Plus shows, where you kind of see certain things coming, and here's the thing, not that it's not a bad thing when you can predict a lot, right? For me, it's always about the execution, and I think that overall this show did a great job of, doing certain things. Now, before we get into things, I want to talk about, the show in general, the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and why it was a great idea to make this a show as opposed to a movie. And it's something that we started talking about on Sunday during our news episode. And that's, what's the future of the show? Should there be a season 2, or should they make a Captain America movie? I think it's going to be both. Now, one thing that I really appreciate about this show is the fact that, as I mentioned on Sunday, it's a 6-hour movie. You have the time to do a lot. You get into the world building. You introduce Madripoor, you introduce new characters, you introduce the world in which the MCU is in now because of the GRC, because of the displacements, because of the blip. You have this new world that we're trying to get familiar in, and we see the issues that this world has now. So I think they did a great job of building the world. They did a great job of transitioning characters into what they will be moving down the line in future MCU projects. I think that if they were to do the transition of Captain America in a movie, it wouldn't have felt as special as it did in this show. Especially when you consider the character of Isaiah Bradley, especially when you consider, the treatment of, people of color in general in the United States and in the MCU, and kind of, how they're neglected in history, and kind of like, we need to take steps to do better. Especially, with that final scene with Isaiah Bradley. I think that the overall transition and the tension of Bucky and Sam in terms of why did you throw the shield away, or why did you give the shield away, I should say, which leads into kind of Sam's journey into becoming the new Captain America, is well spent in a TV show / 6-hour movie, as opposed to a, even, let's just say, a 3-hour movie.
Oh yeah. We could really go on that journey, right? And which is what we did. And even in this 6-hour movie show that we have, a lot of it was spent on action, which is fine. That's what we wanted. But they were able to give us those scenes, those moments that had particular gravity towards the characters that you wouldn't have been able to do in a movie. They would have felt awkward. Or out of the, like, they would have been edited out. They would have possibly been filmed and included as an extra, but it wouldn't have had the impact that it did. Like, even as simple as the bank scene when he's there with his sister trying to get the loan and whatnot. And there's just all these things that they were able to do that got you closer to the protagonists, right? Either mentally or compassion wise, things like that. And I think that, even in our discussion about the show, in some of the revelations about the GRC and the challenges that they have, and just understanding the scope of it, was really good to have those week-long breaks to mull it over and to think about that. And you don't get that in a movie. A movie is a continuous kind of assault on your senses, and it has to be bludgeoning in its messages to be effective, whereas this had nuance. This was touching subjects that are really heavy on the American psyche, especially right now, especially after last summer. And bravo, but as well, I get the idea to want to see Captain America, like the Falcon being Captain America on the big screen, and maybe going with a story and a bad guy that needs the attention of the big screen. I get the evolution into Captain America 4. And I think that that's important to do, because I think it's important to have a black Captain America on the screen in the box office. I think that that's important for a lot of people, and I would celebrate it. I would think that would be something that, when the world gets back to normal, that people want to go see that summer blockbuster and celebrate the fact that it's okay and completely normal to have a black Captain America. And yeah, those are my feelings on that whole thing. It's right what you're saying. It's right where it's going, and I would still be okay if they wanted to make a second season about it. I would be okay. I think all things can exist in this universe.
Yeah. One thing that, I believe that what makes this transition and this back and forth of TV shows and movies easier is the fact that TV shows are getting a respectable budget. If they were getting Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. budget, this would not have the same impact whatsoever.
Yeah, true that. Because honest to God, the effects and even the casting, the fact that you have the same actors from the movies portraying themselves in the show and adding star power into it. You know what I mean? Adding the Julie Louis-Dreyfus. You know what I mean? Like adding these mega people into it. This just speaks to the amount of money. You're right. Because if they're cutting corners on budgets and they're using extras to fill certain roles, and they're maybe going for a B-list actor instead of an A-list actor,
Yeah.
to reprise something, it definitely affects the quality of the show, especially if that person shows up in the movies and they're not well suited towards
Exactly. And that's the thing. Like, I just think that this back and forth that they're doing is only working well because Disney is doing a great job. Marvel, MCU, whatever you want to call it, they're doing a great job of casting with a budget in mind. And they're letting things play out on the small screen as they would in the big screen. It's just a longer form of storytelling. We're going to talk about kind of what we think is going to happen after this in the future, because I have some things I wanna touch on with you. We haven't really discussed this because I wanted to wait until this episode. So let's just jump right into it. So similar to WandaVision, we jump right into the action in this finale. Literally within moments, Bucky and Sharon Carter are on the scene, assessing the hostage situation taking place ahead of the GRC's vote. Carly has this huge plan where she essentially wants to divide the heroes and misdirect the hostages, as several of her flag smasher disguise themselves as security, military, or pilots. Bucky and Sharon split up while Sam and George Batroc trade kicks. So that's one of the bigger fights. So Carly's crew shepherds the clueless GRC senators into police trucks for Carly to intercept elsewhere. Sharon kills a flag smasher. Bucky faces Carly, and Sam hits his trusty Red Wing drone back from the dead after Carly destroyed it in an earlier version. Sam eventually frees the passengers and even saves another police helicopter in the process, much to the delight of many observing New Yorkers.
Yeah, here comes Sam in the bird outfit, but Captain Americaized, He's got
it's the Wakandan Captain America suit. So as we guessed last week, that was in the box. It was the Captain America suit because, again, it makes sense, right? Like, he's not a super soldier. He's a normal person. And I think they're going to, they're making that distinction between super soldier and normal person. And one way that Sam can kind of power up is to have Wakandan armor.
Yeah, and you called it, right? And they specifically said that. Yep. They said, the vibranium is the necessary tool to basically give him his powers, or give him that edge that would be needed to fight super soldiers or anything else that comes up with the MCU. And even in that sequence, when he rescues the helicopter pilots out of the police helicopter, he does this move where he puts the wings around him, the vibranium wings, and the shield is on top.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's purposely built to make this little huddle thing. I thought that was so cool. I was just like, oh man, that is the shit right there.
Yeah.
That is such an awesome thing. And even in some of the fights, he deploys the wings to stabilize him against some of the kicks and whatnot that these super soldiers are able to deliver. So it's funny to me that it's a half cowl. I know it's going after the comic book look, but I'm like, I would want my noggin covered in vibranium if I was flying around in a suit. Yeah. I wouldn't want to be doing it with,
and that's the thing, right? Cowl. I think it was really cool that they made a very comic-like representation of the costume, but I also think that, like, in actuality, some of it just doesn't make sense. But whatever, he's gonna get an upgrade when it's time for Captain America 4 to come around, or whatever it is in the future.
I think that this is it's almost like a Captain Marvel type thing. Remember in Captain Marvel, near the end, they gave her the suit that she had in the comic books and the look that she had in the comic books. And then in Endgame, they bring Brie in her updated suit. You know what I mean? That's more acclimatized to her. So they paid homage to the books, and then they evolved it into what they wanted her to be. And I think that's what we're going to see with this Captain America outfit. It was a little bit shoulder patty to me because of those shoulders and whatnot. And I know that Anthony Mackie isn't really that shouldery.
Mhm.
So I was like, it probably was a little bit uncomfortable for him, maybe.
Yep.
But it looked good. It looked good. I was jumping for joy.
Yep.
Seeing him and just seeing the iconic wings. So
Yes.
it was just they really did a great job on executing on that.
Yep, I honestly thought that we were going to see the new Falcon, so Torres, in this, but I guess they're going to be waiting for that. Anyways, jumping back into things, Bucky is outnumbered by Carly and company as he attempts to free the remaining hostages, but John Walker reemerges in his old Captain America getup to confront Carly and avenge his fallen partner, Lamar Hoskins. So within a matter of seconds, his knockoff Captain Shield is crushed, and I love they do this whole mid-credit scene just for it to be destroyed within seconds.
Yeah, I was watching it thinking this thing's gotta buckle, and it was,
it's aluminum,
crap.
and you know it's also kind of saying you're not Captain. It's a symbolic way of saying you're not Captain America. Don't even try to be Captain America, and I kind of that's kind of what that represented, because later on he becomes who we've mentioned he would become officially.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. I enjoyed watching him try to prance around with that shield and be as effective and watch it all fall apart, essentially.
Yep.
And I think that that's a great euphemism for him as a character in that moment, especially when he sees Sam in the outfit with the shield.
Yeah.
And it's almost like this, you can read his body language of resignation and acceptance.
Yeah.
This guy can pull it off. This guy is a hero.
Yeah. Exactly.
And that's maybe it's me projecting that, but that's the way I legitimately felt. But I also found it interesting that Sam and Bucky accepted him in their, you know what I mean? They were like, hey, I'm glad you're here. You know what I mean? There wasn't this
They
revulsion.
never really hated him per se, right? They were more mad at each other.
No.
And they were upset at the fact that it was this government-mandated Captain America, but I don't think they never really had issues with John Walker. Even after what John Walker did, they never really hated him. They always try to find the good in people.
Yeah, I was a little bit weirded out by the whole bloodying the shield thing that he did and killing somebody with it. I get it. I'm sure these guys have all felt like killing the other guy, or especially after losing somebody. I know that there's the gravity of Lamar's passing, in Battlestar there, that John was really in the depth of. But there was an observable thing that was happening through all this that I picked up on with him. And that is when he was looking to go after Carly or save the truck. Go after Carly, save the truck. You can see him getting twitchy when he looks at Carly. And then you can see him shake it off and decide that he wants to be the superhero and get the truck.
Yep.
And that was interesting to me because that was noticeable, right? That there was the twitchiness that we've remarked upon and him dismissing it. So, yeah, it changes things going forward for John.
Yep.
For me.
And it does in general.
Because
as you just mentioned, Walker gets his moment of redemption, and he's given the choice between attacking Carly and saving one of the hostage trucks. Walker chooses the latter, grabbing a hold of the vehicle just as it's falling into a construction site, allowing Sam enough time to swoop in and bring it back to safety. So in the chase that follows, Carter locates Carly, and it's clear that this isn't the first time they've crossed paths. Carter is finally revealed to be the power broker. She says, when you came to Madripoor, you reminded me of a young me, Carter tells Carly as she lowers her gun. I took you in, gave you an opportunity, and you betrayed me.
Yep. It's the surprise we all saw coming.
Yep. And then
she
Carly
isn't
says,
Mephisto.
"Yep, she isn't Mephisto, but she is the power broker." So Carly replies by saying, "You wanted to control a world that hurt you, but I wanted to change it." So it kind of shows that Sharon Carter is pissed off at people for how she was treated after Captain America 3 Civil War.
Yeah, she has a right to be. I do struggle with this revelation though, in the sense that it never really struck me as something her character would be capable of. And I guess the believability factor of her becoming the power broker. I always just assumed that the play was going to be maybe there's a different person playing the power broker and she's just helping out with it and maybe not realizing how bad of a bad guy she is. But she's full in on it, right? It became pretty noticeable even early on when she gassed one of the guards with this mercury gas.
Mm-hmm.
That was a pretty brutal way to go, and she had no remorse.
Yeah.
So I'm like, it was already tipping pretty heavily towards this woman's mean. Mm-hmm. So, and it's a choice. It's a choice. It may not be consistent with what they wanted us to believe with her character in the past, but it's a choice now, and it makes things interesting going forward.
I have a scenario for you, but we're going to talk about it at the end of the show because it does involve the post-credits scene. All right, so Sharon Carter tries to convince Carly to return to her service, forgiving her for stealing her supply of super soldier serum, but Carly refuses. Batroc, who'd been secretly hired to work with the Flag Smashers by the power broker, stumbles in to finish his betrayal of Carly, but he evidently never knew that Sharon was the power broker and foolishly tries to blackmail her on the spot. Carter shoots and kills him.
Bad call, man.
Yep. Yep.
So and funny. Then, she's the one that set him up with all that stuff to go after Falcon, right?
Yep, exactly.
She's been playing both ends.
Yep, that's what I love about this. It's just like everyone always plays both sides. Like, you know, with Hydra, now with the power broker. And I think there's a lot more to it. I think there's many more sides because the question I will pose right now is who is on the other side of those phone calls that Sharon always has?
Yeah, that's the question, right? Is it just basically one of her partners or an investor? Or is it somebody higher up that she answers to? Or is it Zemo? Like
exactly.
there's a lot going on here, and as well, you know, like we'll get into it, but Zemo's got his fingerprints all over this too, right?
Yep. Yep. It could even be our second guess of who the power broker was, and that's Thunderbolt Ross, right? Like this could be...
Yeah, because he's in charge of the raft.
Mm-hmm.
So exactly. He's not far away.
Yep. He's in arm's length away from all of this and from everyone in the situation, right? So it's everyone just being played similar to Hydra, right?
Yep. Exactly. And that's kind of where my line of thought is going, because it took me a second watch through to fully realize what had happened at the end in terms of who did what and reported to whom and which conversation was being had with Val and things like that, because that all changed everything. So now our U.S. agent has tendrils that go to another comic book series, The Dark Avengers.
Well, that's exactly where that's one of my theories. All right, so Sam arrives. So Carly shoots Sharon Carter in the waist. Sam arrives just when Carly is about to finish off Carter and makes one final attempt to prevent her from going further down the dark path she's taken. Sam refuses to fight, but his act of mercy fails to sway Carly. Just as she's about to gun down Sam, Carter, now briefly on her feet, shoots and kills Carly.
Yeah, muddying those waters, right? Playing both ends.
Playing both ends and covering her own ass. And
basically taking the only other person who knows who she is on the playing field out, right?
Yep. The two people who figured her out are dead now, so.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's other people who know, but like I say, these are the two pieces that are on the battlefield right now and pose the most danger to Sharon. So
Yep.
Sharon had to do what Sharon had to do, and she pulled the full Karen and took care of Carly.
Yep. Sam flies back to the police, holding Carly in his arms, and makes a speech to 3 GRC senators in an attempt to convince them to reconsider their votes on the act that Carly died fighting against, one that would reset the world's borders and displace millions. The speech, all caught on camera and broadcast over the news, also serves as Sam's first public address as the new Captain America. If you could remember what it was like to be helpless and face a force so powerful it could erase half the planet, you would know that you're about to have the exact same impact. He says, "This isn't about easy decisions, Senator. You just don't understand." The senator dismissively replies, and then this is the part that was awesome. He says, "I'm a black man wearing the stars and stripes. What don't I understand? Every time I pick this thing up, I know there are millions of people out there who are going to hate me for it. Even now, here, I feel it. The stares, the judgment, and there's nothing I can do to change it. Yet, I'm still here. No super serum, no blonde hair, no blue eyes. The only power I have is that I believe we can do better."
Yeah, it was a nice moment. It really was. It was a little bit heavy-handed, but it needed to be, right?
It was a direct
it was his
response
chance.
to his conversation with Isaiah Bradley, right? It's basically talking to Isaiah more than anything else.
Yeah, it was that. It was him explaining being at peace with making the decision. And it was also him taking a page out of Steve Rogers' book and owning the mantle of Captain America and the responsibility that you have to the people and whatnot, and explaining yourself. And he did it. You know, there's a lot of stuff that fits about it. The first time I watched it, I just felt it was very disjointed, but I appreciated the message, right? I liked what I heard. I just didn't like the way it was done necessarily in the show, but it had to be done. So I'm not going to fight it. I'm not going to nitpick it. It just felt a little weird. Second time I watched it, it felt a little bit better. So, you know, it's one of those moments, and I like it. I like overall the tone. It's a really simplistic argument.
Really is.
But that's all you can do. You know, I know that there's infinite shades to that. But, you know, I think the senator is just choosing to shut the fuck up because the cameras are rolling, you know, and but it's just, you know, the eventuality. Well, the GRC decided to go against it and not do the vote and all this stuff. Like, it worked. And that's interesting. That was a choice. But, so, you know.
Yep. So after witnessing what the GRC's actions have done to people across the world firsthand, Sam is well aware of the hypocrisy and failure of the government. Sam doesn't want the sacrifice of those like Isaiah or even Carly to go in vain. So this one particular oblivious senator is so fixated on Carly's misguided methods that he fails to consider why Carly and her crew were fighting in the first place. So soon after, the GRC scraps the PATH Act and Falcon begins to tie up some loose ends. John Walker gets a new costume as he meets with John Walker eventually gets his new costume. He meets with Contessa Valentina Allegra de Fontaine and becomes the U.S. agent. Baron Zemo gets the last laugh from prison as his loyal old butler detonates a bomb that kills 3 of the surviving Flag Smashers. Yuri Nakajima gets closure as Bucky crosses off a name in his list of amends by finally telling Yuri about his part in the death of his son. And Sam pays a final visit to Isaiah Bradley and his grandson Ellie and provides Isaiah with at least a small piece of the recognition he deserves for his heroics in the war and the sacrifices he's made. Although Isaiah is owed a lot more for everything he endured at the hands of the U.S. government, Sam has arranged for a special Isaiah Bradley section at the Captain America exhibit in the Smithsonian. So they've enshrined Bradley as a part of the mantle's legacy. So that's that.
Yeah, and that was the stuff, right, where we had the chauffeur taking out the the super soldiers, right? Blowing up the van. Now, that was interesting because Val's little speech to U.S. Agent, like, first of all, U.S. Agent, interesting that he's going from the Stars and Stripes to wearing black. And now we have a black Captain America wearing white, which is kind of a dichotomy and whatnot, an interesting little take on it on that level in the show. But Val basically says that she planned everything. Like, she's been in communication with Zemo in the raft. And she's basically saying in that scene that it's like I planned it, but I didn't plan it. But I did plan it. You know what I mean? So she basically is working with Zemo's butler in order to take them out. And that makes Zemo happy because there's less super soldiers in the world, and we know he hates super soldiers. So that really just leaves us with Isaiah and Bucky as the last remaining super soldiers on the field that we know of. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's interesting because it sets off where all this is going to go. And obviously, where it potentially could go. I don't think we're looking at a Hydra kind of thing right now, but we're looking at something a lot different.
A lot bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we have what you're going to talk about in the post-credit scene with Sharon, so.
Yep, exactly. So before I go there, Sam and Bucky return to Delacroix, Louisiana, to celebrate with Sam's sister, Sarah, and her kids. The duo has come full circle after butting heads in previous films and most of the series, but both have now finally found new purpose, even in the post-blip world, without their mutual friend Steve Rogers to guide them. In Bucky's case, it's happiness. In Sam's case, he is now Captain America and has accepted his role in shaping this new world.
Yep, and that killer song at the end.
Yeah,
I really enjoy it. There's a lot of good about that. I really like that scene because they felt natural. They felt like they were actually friends. And I did like that Bucky dropped the book off with the therapist. And it was interesting because of the way that we remarked upon it in our analysis originally about putting Bucky against that backdrop of the serene forest. And I liked how that was used with this shot because it meant that Bucky finally found some peace.
Yep, his inner peace.
Right, and yeah, it was cute because he was holding his arm out and the kids were hanging off of it and all that. Like, there was a lot of fun that was being had in a very quick take.
It just seems like for the first time in a long time, these characters can lay back, relax, and enjoy their lives. They don't have to worry about a Thanos. They don't have to worry about, being fugitives. They can finally just chill for once in their life.
Yeah, and I like that vibe. It was a big payoff for me. I found it was extremely comforting to end the show like that and to have that kind of closure and to know, like I say, that these guys are friends and they're going to be friends and we're going to see them in other stuff and they're going to be a good team.
Yep.
So his acknowledgement of tapping the shield even after all the crap went on.
Exactly. So in the post-credits scene, the government not only provides Sharon Carter with a full pardon for her past aid of then-fugitive Steve Rogers in Captain America Civil War, but gives her back her old job in the CIA. So the newly reinstated Agent Carter barely makes it out of the door before she begins setting up deals as the power broker. Start lining up our buyers, she commands over the phone. Super soldiers might be off the menu, but we're about to have full access to government secrets, prototype weapons, you name it. Should be something for everyone.
Yep. So, yeah.
So
it's interesting. She just moved into a big category now.
Yeah. So there's a couple things here. My take is that this is setting up Armor Wars.
Yep.
Because as you kind of hinted at, we are getting the Dark Avengers storyline at some point, right? We're seeing a lot of who the Dark Avengers are, and I think that it's kind of cool that we're at this point now where it's like, okay, so this is one of the storylines we're going to see. So that's my take. Now,
yeah, I would agree.
One of the other things one of the theories that I thought of, and I haven't gone online. I don't know if anyone is talking about this, and that is that this isn't actually Sharon Carter, that this is part of Secret Invasion, and this is actually a scroll.
That's a possibility too, because they can do that now, right?
Exactly.
They and that might explain the character's change, right? And Secret Invasion is something that's happening. Armor Wars is something that's happening, and Disney have announced these things, and they're obviously setting it up because we know now that Disney don't waste footage on stuff that's not going to have impact.
Exactly.
So,
so with either scenario, let's talk about the Secret Invasion scenario first. If we go to the Secret Invasion scenario, Sharon Carter might not be Sharon Carter. A scroll might be the one who's actually, controlling all of this. We don't know to what degree things are at. We don't know what side Nick Fury's on anymore. We don't know really what's going on in the grand scheme of things. So, that's if we take the Secret Invasion and the sudden change in character, or these could actually be lining up to the exact same thing. Like it could be, the Secret Invasion is the Dark Avengers.
yeah, that's a possibility too, right? It's an interesting dynamic that they're playing with, because as we know, they love to go to the comic books for the ideas, but they change their execution in the movies and the show.
Yep.
And
look at Civil War, right? It had the idea of the Sokovia Accords, or the government mandated laws, but they had their MCU spin to it. So taking a look at the Dark Avengers, let's take a look at who they actually have. So you have White Vision, you have U.S. Agent, you have Black Widow's sister, who we have yet to be introduced to. We have Scorpion from Spider-Man. We have Madame Hydra, who's going to be playing the Nick Fury character. Remember Abomination from the Hulk? Well, he's there. We have Agatha as Scarlet Witch, and we have Iron Man, who we don't know who's going to be Iron Patriot, because the Armor Wars, in my opinion, or my speculation, that's where we're going to find out who the dark Iron Man is going to be.
Yep, I think you're 100% right.
Yep.
Like, this is all being templated. It really is.
I know, right?
It's when we know that there's a new Falcon that's going to be coming along. We know that we're meeting Isaiah's son is going to be playing a part in all this at some point as was it Patriot. And there's just so much. Like, I'm just like, oh my gosh! Like they can literally choose or choose not to do whatever the hell they want, and they're still going to be writing the checks.
Yeah, we have Young Avengers that are lined up. We have Secret Invasion. We have Armor Wars. We have Dark Avengers. There's just so many direction. And one thing that they did say is that this phase is going to be a lot of small storylines, as opposed to a major Thanos-like ending, right? Like, it's going to be a lot of smaller things as opposed to this big shebang at the end.
Well, you have to look at the fact that there was one phase, like 1, 2, 3. You know what I mean? Like, the phases themselves didn't do a Thanos at the end of each phase. They built to a Thanos, right? And that's what they're doing now. They're putting in the groundwork to get the stuff done. Now, I got a question for you. Is there going to be a time at which there's just too much and you're going to go back and just be like, remember when the Avengers was just this?
Yeah.
Because honestly, I'm starting to lose my taste for everything with the Secret Invasion crap. Because it's so maddening that as a person watching this and absorbing it, and then to think that, well, it could be part of the Secret Invasion.
Yeah.
And you can't trust anything. Disney have to be really careful here, or Marvel does.
Yep.
Really, really careful about how they do this. Because it can get frustrating for the fans, the casual fans, really fast.
100%.
Where if you're constantly screwing over your audience with these gotcha moments, and then like completely like non-payoff gotcha moments. You know what I mean? Like these are all devices used in order to excuse or get around certain storyline options and just go, oh, secret invasion. It's a Skrull. You know what I mean? And then you're like, oh, come on. Really? Everybody's a Skrull. You can't trust your eyes on anything anymore. I just hope it doesn't get that way.
I don't think it's going to get to that extent. But one thing, and I've been saying this since 2015, that is that, one thing that the MCU isn't doing as well is letting each piece of art be its own thing, because it's always setting something bigger up. And this is the issue with, the creative control that directors have, that where they have to do certain things. They're limited in how much freedom they actually have. We saw this with directors being fired and leaving, particularly Ant-Man, because they lose control. They have to do so much and set up so much for the next property. So, it's great that everything is connected and everything leads somewhere, but we lose a little, I don't know what, as the French say, right? It's we're leaving something on the table, and that's letting each property kind of breathe and be its own thing. And I think that will ultimately hurt the MCU in the grand scheme of things, but this has never been done before. It's never going to be done again in terms of this interconnectivity world, and through various genres and mediums. So I don't know. We'll see.
I can completely see this day where I'm like firing up Disney Plus or grabbing my movies and just watching the first Avengers and just thinking how simple life was.
Mm-hmm.
Because these storylines are getting absolutely crazy. Now, they're fun. They are fun. But, yeah, you're right. They're not giving each story its own breadth, its own ability to exist on its own. And this interconnectivity is getting a bit played. Like... It is a danger. It is legitimately a danger. It feeds the same thing that it detracts from, though. That's the worst part. You go because you want the interconnectedness, but at the same rate, it works against it on another level.
Yep.
Good problem to have for them, but
it is a great problem.
I'm more concerned about everything always being flipped on its ear and somebody pulling a mask off and being a Skrull. I just find that covers lazy writing.
But it hasn't happened yet. It's always been post-credit scenes where we see something to that effect, but it hasn't been the main driver of a story just yet.
Yeah, and that's where my worry is that when you do it, and you will have to do it at some point, just do it well, please. Because if you screw over the audience in it, and I don't think Marvel will. It's just a fear.
Mm-hmm.
Might be unfounded. They have earned my trust in what they're accomplishing here, but it could also lose people a lot. It's this whole idea of the multiverse, this whole idea of what they're going to do with Loki. I know it's going to execute well, but man, there's some danger in there because it's intimidating to some people, and I know they're trying to bite it down. So you accept it in little bits instead of throwing it all at you. And then at the end of it, you're going to go, oh, wow, I really enjoyed all that. And I took it in and I drank it, right? Like, oh, Endgame with all the different timelines and all this stuff. And you're going to get to a good spot, I think. But they're really good at it. But it's just one misstep and could cost them a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's on them. It really is like what we have is gold. So we're always going to have that, I guess.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So we'll see where they kind of go with this. There's so many directions where this can go. But yeah, it's just so crazy. And again, I just love the fact that I love two things. We talked about the fact that everyone, Sam and Bucky get R&R. They get the happy ending, which is very rare in Marvel nowadays. But I love the fact that the title card at the end changed from the Falcon and the Winter Soldier to Captain America and the Winter Soldier.
Yeah, that teared me up a little bit. There's one thing that gets me in movies, all right? I'll tell you something. If I watch Return of the King, Lord of the Rings there, Return of the King, I get emotional watching that because people get their credit. People get their due. They get paid their respect. And I have a difficult time seeing that on screen when it's well done with people that I care about. And I felt that way with this too, in that moment, and also in the moment with Isaiah, when Sam brings him in to show him the trophy or show him the statue, and the fact that he's being recognized, were all very emotional moments for me, because I could feel I was compelled by that. I was just like, really. It's a bit lazy in one sense, but it's also just nice for the story. It gave that nice closure.
Yep, exactly.
And it's nice. It's a nice feeling to have.
Yep.
Right. And I like the fact that Isaiah felt the love.
Yeah.
And I like that it was a redemption of Sam's character and Sam's choices, which wouldn't be his, but he was able to achieve it through his choices. So there's a lot of little underlying things in there that I took away as very positive. But like I say, I know me personally as a guy, it gets a little heavy on me. I don't know why that is, but I always find it a little bit uncomfortable.
It is what it is. But at the end of the day, it was a nice little ending. It was happy. You're right, it was a little emotional, but it was just well done. So just like that show leaving us in a nice little package, we should probably do the same. So let's do what we do every episode. And Phil, let our listeners know how they can get a hold of us.
Of course, if you want to get in touch with us and let us know what makes you emotional when watching this kind of stuff, you can find us at www.itscanonpodcast.com. You can track us down on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at It's Canon Podcast. You can email us at show@itscanonpodcast.com. You can find us basically Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play. Anywhere you find podcasts, you're going to find the It's Canon Podcast show. And if you like what you hear, be sure to subscribe and leave a rate and review if the platform allows it. Thank you so much for taking the time to tune in on your busy Wednesday midweek episode.
Yep, that's right. It's fun. I like it. I enjoy it. So that's it. Another episode done. He's Phil. I'm Boris. Good night.